In the theater of history, some figures cast long, dark shadows. John D. Rockefeller was such a man, a titan of industry whose legacy is far more complicated. Beneath philanthropy lay a story of control. Rockefeller saw education as a tool, a weapon disguised as a gift. Through foundations like the General Education Board, he spun a web across the South, each dollar given with invisible strings. The true nature of his project was hidden beneath public praise and humanitarian awards. His legacy lingers in the bricks and mortar, a chilling reminder that the most dangerous chains are often invisible. Rockefeller's influence endures, woven into the very fabric of American education. The question remains, who truly benefits when power masquerades as generosity? At the dawn of the 20th century, a new force emerged in America, not armies or kings, but the immense power of industrial capital, embodied by men like John D. Rockefeller. From their financial towers, these men saw a nation of independent minds and a problem. Their vision was not for a nation of thinkers, but of workers. In 1902, the General Education Board, GEB, was born, presented as philanthropy but designed to reshape the American soul. The mission sounded noble, uplift the masses through schooling. But in private, Rockefeller's advisor, Frederick T. Gates, saw independence as a flaw to be corrected. The goal order, efficiency, and a society managed like a machine. Mass education was not to liberate minds, but to prepare each person for their place in the industrial hierarchy. The philosophy was pragmatic. Society must be stratified. A small elite would rule. The masses would work. A liberal arts education for all would only breed discontent and rebellion. The GEB's blueprint aimed to transform schools into factories for obedient workers. The age of the free mind was ending. These architects saw themselves as benevolent planners, but their order served factories, corporations, and a placid working class. The GEB, with its vast funds, set out not just to build schools, but to capture their essence, turning learning into conditioning. The descent had begun, quietly and methodically. The new system would ensure the gears of commerce turned smoothly, without dissent. The promise of education was twisted into a tool for control. The GEB's influence would reach every classroom, shaping generations to come. The transformation was underway, and the consequences would echo for a century. The blueprint was set. Minds would be molded, not awakened. The American schoolhouse was forever changed. Rockefeller's fortune became the lever to reshape public education. The GEB didn't seize power, it bought it, offering vast sums to schools willing to conform. Those who resisted the new, standardized vision were left to wither. The war on small community schools began. Local control was labeled chaos and replaced by centralized districts. This was called progress, but its true purpose was to break local bonds. Standardized curricula could now be imposed from above. The GEB also poured money into elite universities, funding departments that would justify and perpetuate the factory model. These institutions trained a new generation of administrators, loyal to the GEB's vision. The strategy was devastating. Funding created dependency, consolidation broke autonomy, and university influence ensured the system would self-replicate. The soul of American education was hollowed out, replaced by something colder. The transformation was silent, executed with grants and the lure of money. The schoolhouse was rebuilt in the image of the factory. Local voices faded, distant experts ruled. The new system prized efficiency over individuality. The GEB's grip tightened and the old spirit of education faded. The age of community-driven learning was over. At the heart of this transformation was the curriculum. The GEB championed a single, standardized curriculum for the entire nation. The goal: predictability and uniformity. Students everywhere learned the same basic facts, wrote arithmetic, basic literacy, and memorized information. Subjects that encouraged critical thinking were pushed aside. History became a sanitized timeline. Literature and the arts were deemed luxuries. The curriculum was a tool for conditioning, not inspiration. Standardized testing enforced this uniformity, turning schools into test prep centers. Teachers abandoned creativity for drills and practice tests. The landscape of learning was flattened into multiple-choice questions. Education became passive reception, not discovery. Students learned to accept, not to question. The system produced people literate enough to work, but not to challenge the system. The chains were mental, forged by industrial ambition. The mind's range was limited by design. The curriculum became a cage, not a key. The new curriculum demanded a new kind of teacher. The independent schoolmaster was replaced by compliant classroom managers. Teacher colleges, funded by the GEB, focused on method and discipline, not intellectual passion. Teachers became technicians, expected to follow scripts, not curiosity. Their job maintain order, deliver preset lessons, and ensure every child met standardized specs. Creativity and autonomy were seen as defects. School bureaucracy mirrored corporate hierarchies, with teachers at the bottom. Administrators, trained in GEB-funded programs, enforced rigid rules. Teachers who resisted were marginalized or fired. A culture of fear and conformity settled in. The classroom became an assembly line, and teachers its silent conductors. A central pillar of the Rockefeller plan was vocational training for the working class and minorities. Academic learning was deemed unnecessary for these groups. Practical skills were prioritized. Tracking sorted children, early wealthy kids to academics, the rest to manual trades. Schools became workshops and kitchens, preparing students for predetermined roles. This was called practical, but it was social engineering. The goal: limit mobility and keep children in their parents' stations. Frederick T. Gates wrote of molding people with perfect docility. The system managed aspirations, preventing the masses from seeking more. Vocational tracks were dead ends disguised as opportunity. Students learned tasks, not how to think or lead. The schoolhouse became a gatekeeper, not a gateway. Futures were decided before children knew they had a choice. The factory school had no room for critical minds. Humanities, philosophy, literature, critical history were seen as threats. The curriculum was stripped of challenging content, reducing education to job training. Deep learning and ethical understanding were lost. Students learned to memorize, not to question or create. The system produced skilled workers but impoverished spirits. The flame of curiosity was starved, not extinguished by force but by neglect. The war on the thinking mind left a population trained for procedure, not for thought. The GEB's blueprint fell hardest on the most vulnerable. For black students in the South and poor rural whites, education became a cage, not a ladder. GEB funding built schools, but only for industrial training, manual labor, not professions. This reinforced racist and classist hierarchies, locking communities into servitude. Local power was stripped away. Education became population management, the system's most brutal application, using education to limit futures. The promise of equality was a mask for deeper inequality. The fate of millions was decided before they could dream. The world of Rockefeller is gone, but his educational blueprint remains. The factory model school, age grading, bells, standardized tests, still shapes American education. We forget this system was designed for control, not liberation. Its legacy is visible in bored students, frustrated teachers, and persistent inequality. Tracking and test prep factories still sort children by class and race. The system perpetuates the very divisions it claims to overcome. We are all living inside this machine, conditioned to see education as a race for credentials. The struggle for creativity and connection is a fight against this ghost. To build a better future, we must recognize the factory school for what it is, a relic and a cage. Only by understanding this past can we hope to break free. We now live in the world Rockefeller envisioned, a world of vast inequality by design. The school system trained the many to accept their place and not ask for more. It taught job skills but withheld the tools for liberation. The result, a society divided not just by wealth but by the mind. The elite received education for leadership, the rest for obedience. The system forged two kinds of people, prepared for two kinds of lives. Political apathy and cultural divides are its legacy. The chains forged in schools have become invisible, but the human spirit endures. Rebellion begins by seeing the cage and demanding an education worthy of free people. The path forward is uncertain, but it starts with reclaiming the schoolhouse for wonder and inquiry. We were born to be free if we dare to remember. In Atlanta, Spelman and Morehouse rose as monuments to black aspiration, funded and shaped by Rockefeller. To the world, these were acts of benevolence. But look closer. These were gilded cages, not fortresses of freedom. Rockefeller's hand guided their creation, ensuring they served his vision of racial control. The curriculum was curated to produce compliance, not revolution. Morehouse men were trained for roles that supported the existing order. Spelman women were groomed for domesticity and service. The goal, a generation that knew its place. Rockefeller's agents controlled funding, leadership, and philosophy, swiftly removing anyone who pushed for true liberation. The schools were kept dependent, always on a financial leash. They became models of safe black education, showcasing a manageable population to white America. The architecture impressed but also contained, a constant reminder of who held the power. Students walked halls paid for by a man who defined their limits. The illusion of opportunity was dangled before them, but the future was owned by Rockefeller. Progress here was carefully staged. Freedom, always, just out of reach. Why separate men from women? It was a calculated strategy: divide and conquer. Rockefeller knew the black family was the community's strength. To weaken it, he split men and women into separate spheres. At Morehouse, men were taught to pursue individual success, not collective liberation. At Spelman, women were trained for subservience, not leadership. This created a disconnect, preventing powerful partnerships and unified families. The separation fostered misunderstanding and mistrust, atomizing the community. By controlling both men's and women's education, Rockefeller dictated the terms of their relationships and the future of the so-called black family who had been reclassified. These schools were social laboratories, testing theories of control. The wedge driven between black men and women was no accident. It was the plan. Rockefeller's vision echoed the horrors of Native American boarding schools, a blueprint for cultural erasure. So-called black students were disconnected from their heritage, Native history ignored, new slave narrative injected into their veins, rebellions silenced, traditions dismissed. Any teacher or student caught uttering the word Tamari or Moor were silenced or even neutralized. In their place, so-called white European history, Christian piety, and shame for blackness. They were taught Christopher Columbus discovered America and that they were brought over as slaves and workers. Even food became a tool of control, severing ties to home and culture. The goal was assimilation, remake students from the inside out. This process inflicted deep psychological trauma, leaving students caught between worlds. They were taught to reject their roots, yet never fully accepted by white society. The result? Isolation, confusion, and a population easier to control. The blueprint was clear: erase the past to control the present. The scars of this erasure run deep, shaping generations. The cost of civilizing was the loss of self. The shadows of Rockefeller's plan stretch into the present. The legacy is not in statues, but in persistent inequalities and internalized struggles. Underfunded schools, achievement gaps, and subtle messages of limitation are echoes of a century-old plan. The trauma of cultural erasure is an inheritance passed down through generations. Division, shame, and the burden of striving for acceptance, these are living wounds. Yet the names Spelman and Morehouse now stand for black excellence, a testament to resilience. Their success came in spite of the system, not because of it. We must remember these schools were born from a desire to control, not to liberate. The haunting continues, a call to vigilance and truth. Only by understanding the nature of our chains can we hope to break them.